Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and this week's guest is someone who's been featured on the show before. I am having another conversation with Rebekah Hudson, and in this week, we are diving into a topic that is not only pivotal for therapists, but is the linchpin for any successful practice: discovering and marketing to your target audience. In our professional journey, understanding who we are speaking to, who we are trying to help, and who we want to attract is paramount. But the path to identifying your ideal client isn't always clear cut, is it? And that's where today's episode comes into play. We're going to kick things off by demystifying what is a target audience. And we're not stopping at definitions. We're going to explore real-world examples and dissect the subtle yet crucial differences between your scope of practice, niche, target, and ideal client. And then we are going to dive into the why. Why having a well-defined target audience is not just beneficial, but essential to the growth and sustainability of your practice. We'll navigate through the target analogy and discuss a couple of exceptions where having a target audience might not be the recommended route. And of course, the meat of our discussion will revolve around the how. How do you, as a therapist, discover your target audience? How do you sift through the universal to find the unique? The universal you, to be precise. We're going to explore strategic questions and methods to not only identify, but also connect deeply with your target audience. And for those of you that are seeking a helping hand, Rebekah Hudson is here to assist. She has expertise as a marketing professional and copywriter, specializing in the mental health industry. She offers consulting services to help you identify and narrow down your target audience. And for those of you who need a wordsmith to craft organic SEO-friendly copy that resonates with your audience, Rebekah is just a message away. So buckle up as we navigate through the nuances of target audiences, ensuring your message not only reaches the right ears, but also profoundly connects and converts. All right, let's dive right on in. But before we dive into the episode with Rebekah, if you're a mental health pro, you've got to check out Therapy Notes. Manage your billing, scheduling, and more with ease and style. Plus, ePrescribe is now here, and you can unlock 2 free months with the code LISA at checkout at therapynotes.com. All right, back to the show. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and this week's guest is a repeat guest. Welcome back to the show, Rebekah Hudson. It is so great to have you back.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun last time, and I'm just honestly so thrilled to be back.
Yeah, me too. I got so much amazing feedback from your last episode, which was all about creating content for your websites. So if you guys haven't listened to that episode, I will drop the link in the show notes. So be sure to head over and listen to that, because Rebekah gives us some amazing wisdom and knowledge on what type of content and how to create content for, our websites. But for those of people listening who don't know you, can you just share a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you help?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Rebekah Hudson, like you said, and I am a freelance marketing professional and copywriter for the mental health industry. And I'm on a mission to empower the world through SEO-friendly content that speaks directly to your target audience. My past is corporate. So I was a corporate marketing professional for around 6 years. And about 3 years ago, kind of during the rise of COVID-19, a lot of mental health issues surfaced, and I found my calling through mental health writing. So I left the corporate world and began my own private practice for writing. So I have a website, alwaysrebekah.com, and I offer consulting services for mental health practitioners who would like help with identifying their target audience and just overall elevating their marketing strategy. And I also offer writing services for anyone in the mental health arena who would like to outsource their web content.
Great. Oh, I'm so glad you are doing what you're doing, because so many of us out there know the importance of marketing and the power of creating content, but we're just so busy seeing our clients, seeing our patients.
Saving the world.
Yes. Well, You give us a lot of credit. I don't know about that,
No,
but
I give you the appropriate amount of credit. I want to say this right now. The reason why I do what I do is because y'all are doing what you do. And here is what you do. The world is a place that is not perfect. There's room for improvement, and we don't know to what extent we as a world can improve. And so, in my opinion, the people who are making the biggest difference, they're changing the world one person at a time. That's how you improve the world. You improve the world one person at a time. And I think there is a direct correlation between the psychological well-being of individuals, communities, families, and then just global prosperity. So I think it's an honor to help the helpers. I think the work that y'all do is incredible.
well, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna listen to that on the days where I'm like, oh my gosh, am I helping anybody here? Like, I feel like such a failure. What's going on? I'm gonna put you on repeat and I'm just gonna listen. So you guys do the same, like get a little bit of Rebekah in your back pocket when you need to pick me up. So, and we were talking, before we hit record, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. And today we're going to talk about like how to discover your target audience and
Mm-hmm.
identifying and marketing to that ideal client. But we were talking before we hit record about, I was on my last episode from last week, I was explaining to my audience about how I've shifted the podcast description just a little bit. And it's not that I'm changing the podcast, but I'm paying attention to my target audience, because the target
Yes.
audience that I thought I had in the beginning, they're still there, but mine has almost like broadened a little bit. And so
Mm-hmm.
my audience is not just mental health professionals or clinicians, but it's also people who are just interested in emotional well-being, mental health. I like to throw in midlife topics and just the world of talk therapy. Like, what do we do in talk therapy? So I always I love that, it has evolved for me. But I want to hear your take on if somebody is brand new and they want to establish their private practice, or they're looking for clients. What do they do first? How do they know where to go? Like what to do? So I'll let you kind of. I was about to say riff on that. I can't believe I was going to say that, but I'll go with it. I'll let you riff on
I can riff. That's fine.
that. Okay. Sorry about that, y'all.
Okay. No need to be sorry. Let's begin. So, today I want to talk about everything that, in my opinion, my professional marketing opinion, this is what therapists and coaches really need to know about target audiences. I want to discuss the importance of having a clearly identified target audience. And I also want to debunk some of the myths surrounding target audiences, because I hear a lot of feedback like, do I really need one? That feels super limiting. I don't want to, turn anyone away. And well, I also want to explore a couple instances where I actually don't think you need a target audience. There are exceptions to these marketing rules. And by the end of our conversation, my goal is for listeners to walk away with a really clear understanding of who exactly their target audience is, and also a higher perspective on how to better market to them. So I want to start by telling you a story. This is a true story. It features me. So my first day in university, I was so excited. I got all my gen ed out of the way, and it was my first official marketing class. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to go into the world of marketing because I love the psychology of it. So if you're a psychologist and you're thinking, oh my goodness, how do I market myself? I know how to be a psychologist, but I don't know how to market my private practice. I want to put your mind at ease. The world of psychology and marketing, we're very closely related. We tell people, we understand people's thoughts. And that's so important. So you're in a good place. But in this class, our teacher said, okay, it was the first day of the first marketing class. I was so excited. And she said, all right, you landed a client as a marketer. What's the first thing you do? And she broke us up into groups, and we all came up with these real bougie answers. So we were like, oh, well, we need a budget. We can't do anything until we know what our budget is. And then someone else was like, we need to know who our key stakeholders are. Who are we performing for? Who is our boss? Who's going to sign off on this? And who's going to tell us that our marketing strategy is awesome? And then some of us were like, well, I think we need to look at the trends. I mean, how about Google AdWords? What's our social media game? We need to just focus right on the cool ways that we're doing this. The teacher said, y'all are wrong. Nope, don't start with your budget. Don't start with the trending strategies that are out there. Don't do a thing until you know exactly who your target audience is. And then we began the discussion of who is your target audience. So this is where we're going to begin. Your target audience is a specific group of people who are most likely to want a particular product or service that you offer. So target audiences have three primary characteristics. They have demographics, psychographics, and behaviors. The demographics are going to be data. It's just going to be quantitative data, their age, their gender, their ethnicity, their geographical location. The psychographics are a lot more qualitative. It's what are they interested in? What concerns do they have? What do they value? The behavior is basically more like it's a segmentation that focuses specifically on their buying behavior. So when they do convert, in what way do they convert? So for example, let's say your target audience is millennials. So that would be folks ages 25 through 40. Sometimes some stats extend that to 45. So if you market to people between 25 and 45, well, we can tell you a lot about their buying behavior as a target audience. They do online bookings. They just do. They make reservations for restaurants online. They schedule their hair appointment online, and they want to schedule their therapist online. So if that is your demographic, then being mindful of that, have Calendly on your website and make it super easy for them to make their online appointment online. If your target audience is Gen X or a baby boomer, they don't really love to make online bookings. Like, they can, but they would rather call and talk to a real person and discuss what day works best for everyone. But so just being mindful of the behavior of your target audience, it's important enough that they made it the third characteristic of a target audience. I'll stop there, Lisa. Do you have any thoughts you want to share on that?
No, I'm just blown away by that. I mean, I didn't know that. I didn't know millennials prefer to do it online, or that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking like, wow, you just handed us such a nice little freebie about for our websites. Like, okay, if you are, you need to be offering online appointments availability setting, if that is your target audience. That's something. And then, think about too, like not just a millennial, but if you're a child therapist and the parent is a millennial, well, they probably would prefer to book an appointment online for their kids. Okay, cool. So you got me thinking about like all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah. I mean, target audience behavior is so important. That's why they made it like the third characteristic defining target audiences. Because if you just think about where your target audience is, and think about the weird social nuances that they have to come find you. So if you work in an office, are you going to be searching for mental health practitioners to help with your stress for on the job professional? Like, no, you're not going to do that, because what if someone sees you? What if HR is stalking your computer? And you're certainly not going to want to make that call on your lunch break, because someone might overhear you, and people want privacy. So when people are finding you as a therapist, more often than not, they're like in their bed and it's 11 o'clock at night and business hours have ended for the day. And if they have to call you, then that is now something they have to put on their to-do list and find time to do and break away from work within business hours the following day. And that causes a delay with them converting. And if you want them to convert, you need to understand your target audience's behavior and make it super, super easy for them to act in the way that feels natural to their group, to their demographic, to their own. So here's some examples of some target audiences. So I've worked with over 50 mental health practitioners, therapists, and coaches. And some of them, they come to me and I say, well, who's your target audience? That's the first question I ask. And if they don't know, I won't write for them until we hash that out. Like, that's how important it is. And sometimes that's honestly one of the biggest topics that I do consultation calls with my clients. And that's the biggest thing that we discuss is, I don't know who my target audience is. It's kind of everybody. I hear this word a lot. I'm eclectic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second. So I'm going to use myself as an example. So, okay, hold on. I got to get a little silly for a second. Star Wars?
Mm-hmm.
This blew my mind when I discovered, I was like, I don't know, I say blew my mind. I was like 12 when I learned this. And so it was very easy to blow my mind back then. But Star Wars was not written by a NASA astronaut. Like, it was just by an imaginative, creative writer with an idea. So if you're a writer, you really don't need, like, if you're a good writer, you can research and write about absolutely anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a way, therapists are kind of like that. Like, y'all are intuitive, you understand human behavior, and you've got skills. You know what I mean? So I feel like if you're a therapist and you're good, you could probably treat just about anybody. Like, to say that you're eclectic, that is an accurate statement, but I don't think it's a strategic statement. And here's why. So I'm a writer and I can write about almost anything, but I have chosen to specialize in mental health. I felt so bad. There was this dentist, a local dentist, who wanted me to write some stuff for him. And I was like, unless you want to focus on the mental health aspects of someone's self-image regarding their smile, I really can't help you, because I'm specializing in mental health and wellness. So I have really hyper focused on this. I have a certain level of subject matter expertise in this area, both professionally and personally. So if you're a therapist and you're looking to outsource your blog or your web content, or you're just looking for some consulting services with a marketing professional, who would you want to work with? Someone like me, or an eclectic marketing professional who markets for fashion, travel, tech, or whatever? So
Right.
that's an example of that.
Mhm.
The other aspect that I want to touch on briefly is, well, we'll talk more about it later, but I mean, I can write about tech, I can write about fashion, but it would break my heart. It would take forever. It would drain the energy out of me. It's not something I'm super passionate about. So we'll talk about more of that later, but discovering your target audience really has to do with discovering your passion and your purpose. And I think a lot of therapists are afraid to they're afraid to name their target audience because honestly, y'all are so nice. And I've had people tell me, I don't want to turn anyone away. Like, people need help and I can help them. Well, yes, that's true, but
Mhm.
you are a person. And if you don't want to work with somebody, if a certain topic or issue is extremely energetically draining to you, then like, you're allowed to say no. You can
Right.
decide who your ideal client is. And there's a lot of power, and there's a lot of grace in that as well.
Yeah, really. I think that's so important. And I think you hit the nail on the head with that one for sure. I mean, I was just thinking about like who I like working with, what lights me up, what energizes me versus what really sucks the life out of me
Yeah.
and is overwhelming for me. And those clients used to not be that for me. Like in the past, I could handle it. I was great. But then it's just like as I've evolved, my what who I want to work with has changed. And I think
Hmm.
that's fine for therapists out there.
Hmm.
Like it's okay. That's fine. You
Yeah.
can choose that. Like, you don't have to see everybody. And I really like how you pulled out the whole eclectic thing. That makes so much sense to me. You're right. It's like, who would I want to work with as a marketing professional? Somebody who knows my field, who
Hmm.
understands how I perceive things possibly, or how I look at stuff. And I think that's really, really smart. So this is just awesome. Awesome. I love it.
Good, good, good. So yeah, so back to I went on a little rabbit trail there.
Yeah.
So getting back to what I was saying, I've had some therapists come to me and I say, "Well, what's your target audience?" And they say people who feel stuck.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. A teenager can feel stuck. A new mother can feel stuck. A
Mhm.
man going through a midlife crisis, he can feel very stuck.
Mhm.
But the way in which those three different people feel stuck is very, very different.
Right.
That stuckness, once you apply it to an individual circumstance, it becomes something else entirely. So I want to give a couple examples of some target audiences. So for a target audience could be students, high school students. That's one. College students could be another one. A gender specific student could be another option. Children ages 7 through 12, adolescents ages 13 through 18, teens and tweens, neurodivergent individuals, couples, people struggling with behavioral or substance addictions, parents, professionals, executives, high performing professionals, or young professionals fresh out of college. So as you can see, these are very hyper specific and
Mhm.
they're not limiting. So I want to give one example of how this isn't limiting, and you kind of touched on this already. So when you think about a target audience, take up the full space. So if your target audience is teenagers going through struggling with anxiety or self-image, like let's say something with teenagers is your target audience, well, include that target audience right before they become your target audience. Take up the full space. So if your target audience is teens, include tweens. If your target audience is mothers, include women considering motherhood, like take up the full space. If you're a marriage counselor, offer pre-marriage counseling. Like, there's room to grow. There's two sides to every coin. Take up the full space and figure out who your ideal customer is, but then figure out who's around that. So when we talk about a target audience, I want you to actually imagine a target. That's where the idea or concept of target audience comes from. It comes from an actual like target practice. So if you don't have a target audience, then your bow and arrow, which by the way, I should have said that, your bow and arrow, I'm into analogies. Let me start over. You have a bow and arrow that represents your marketing strategy.
Okay.
If you have a target audience, you have a target. If you don't have a target audience, your marketing, your bow and arrow, it's a shot in the dark. And you might hit something, but what? And how do you do it again? How do you scale it? How do you grow it? So having a actual target that you know what you're aiming for, that's why you have it. So you know where your aim is and how you hit it. So the bullseye represents your ideal client, and the space immediately around that bullseye is the rest of your target audience. And so my advice is really take up that full space. And that kind of leads us to the next topic, which is how to take up that full space. So a lot of people get confused when we talk about target audiences. They think, oh, well, how is that any different than my scope of practice or my niche? Or there's all these terms.
Mm-hmm.
So let's define the terms. Your scope of practice is the whole target, and it represents the entire range of services that you are legally licensed, experienced, and qualified to treat. Your ideal client, like I said, is the bullseye, but your niche is the way in which your scope of practice manifests itself. So let's say your scope of practice is you're a psychotherapist with training and experience in PTSD, CPTSD, anxiety, EMDR, brain spotting, internal family systems, attachment theory. Like, let's say that is your scope of practice. The way that your scope of practice manifests might be that you specialize in trauma-informed psychotherapy and EMDR. Okay, that's awesome. Now let's explore your target audience. There's a million different target audiences you could pinpoint this in, but one common one that I see is women, particularly women ages 25 through 55 who have experienced emotional, physical, or psychological trauma, and they're trying to heal from that, and they're really curious about EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of the difference between scope of practice, niche, and target audience.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay.
Cool.
So helpful. Yeah, really helpful. I'm glad you defined those things because, they can definitely kind of overlap, or I can use the words incorrectly when I'm trying to explain it. So that was really helpful.
Good. So I want to talk about 3 exceptions where having a target audience may not actually be necessary.
Okay.
So I think 99% of the time you're going to need a target audience, but in the world of therapy, like there's just exceptions to every rule. So let's talk about them. The first exception is you live in a rural area, you provide in-person services, and there's just not a lot of competition. The whole goal of having a target audience is to be competitive. And so if you don't have a lot of competitors, cast a wide net, bring them all in, be as eclectic as you want. And I mean, why not? If the target audience idea is to be strategic, and you don't really need a good strategy because you live in a rural community or a jurisdiction where there's just not a lot of options and word of mouth travels fast, like you're fine. If you're happy and your clients are happy, carry on. Don't worry about this. I think another exception would be if you're fresh out of school and you just finished your clinical observational hours, like you just got qualified. In that instance, your audience or your target audience it's kind of the same as your scope of practice until you start getting experience, and then you can fine tune what works for you. Unless, of course, you know exactly what you want, then that's great. If you know the exact type of client you want to work with, then just apply your scope of practice in that direction. But if you just finished getting all your credentials and you're not sure who you want to work with, your target audience is your scope of practice for this intro time frame. Okay. The last exception is I have seen in some jurisdictions, specifically like, I don't know, just neighborhoods that are really close knit. Like I'm thinking something small town, but it's also in the city. Like I've actually seen this quite a bit with clients in New York City, for example. Just people talk, and if you, depending on what type of issue or depending on what your niche is, just depending on your community, sometimes you just don't really need a strong target audience because you're just so plugged in and your networking game is so powerful that people just talk, word of mouth travels, and you've got a full caseload and the issues that you're helping to treat are exactly what you want to be doing. And if that's the case, sometimes the stars just align. So I would say if you're listening to this and you've been hearing about target audience and you have some anxiety about how that might be limiting to yourself, I would say this is the question you need to answer. Are you perfectly satisfied with your current caseload? And if the answer is yes, then great, carry on. If the answer is no, I don't really love all the issues I'm treating, I don't really love all, this client's a little bit draining, I want to fine tune over here. If there's anything less than a yes, you need a target audience, and we need to define that.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is so helpful. So I want to take it a step further if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So let's say you know your target audience, you're honed in on it. How do you market to them? Like what, and I know that's kind of just depends on a lot of different things, but what
Mhm.
is your like best advice to how you market to them? I
This is
think that's
actually such a perfect segue for what I wanted to say next. So
okay,
thank
great.
you, Lisa. It's
Uh-huh.
like you read my mind. Okay, so how you market to your target audience, that could be a whole other podcast,
Mhm.
and maybe it will be, but we're going to give just the very high level. I'm going to give you the high level answer. I'm not going to give you the nitty gritty.
Sure.
You start with the universal you. That's how.
Okay.
So what does that mean? The universal you is the reason why platitudes exist. So if I say, Lisa, have you ever felt stuck? If you ask that question to any human, every single human, we all know what it's like to be human. We know what it's like to feel misunderstood, to feel frustrated, to feel stuck, to feel less than neutral. We all know what that feels like. So when you think, how do I market to my target audience? That is a I mean, that's what my degree is in. That's a whole big topic, and we can discuss that absolutely further in detail. But you start by addressing the universal you. And I call this the snowflake effect. So for example, you're a therapist. I'm sure you get this. Everyone comes in and you're trained. You know what to do. You're not going to treat them like a stereotype. You're going to treat them like an individual. You're going to get to know them. Every client is unique. But like, let's be honest, we're all textbook. I don't know. I'm not a therapist, so I can say that. I think that in a lot of ways we all feel so different, but if we really look closely, we all know what it's like to be human. And I call this the snowflake effect because every single one of us is completely different, but we all melt the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So
We all
true.
melt the same.
So true.
So, how do you speak to your target audience? Step one, you figure out what they care about and you figure out what their biggest pain point is. And then you speak directly to that in an empathetic way. And the
Mhm.
way in which you speak to someone, like that empathy, like you really have to custom curate that. So, for example, let's say your target audience is, again, I feel so bad. I am stereotyping, and marketing works because of stereotypes. So everyone is different and unique. And I don't want to take away from that, but it's really hard to not touch on the topic of stereotypes when it comes to target audiences, because that is how we group market segments together. So forgive me, I am going into some stereotyping here, but let's say there is a new mom, and let's say she's going through some postpartum depression and she's feeling very anxious. The way you speak to her is going to be different than the way you speak to, I don't know, let's say a 50 something year old man who is going through a midlife crisis.
Mhm.
Both of them are going to have pain points. They're both going to feel less than neutral. They're both going to feel the weight of humanity. They're going to feel the weight and the burden and responsibilities of life. They're going to feel unappreciated, misunderstood, exhausted. But the way in which they feel those feelings is going to be slightly different. So speaking to, like, I want to say this, and I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way, but when you are marketing to a mental health target audience, you kind of want to talk to them like they're a very well educated professional child. And I
Makes
say
sense.
that with a lot of compassion and not with humor.
Mhm.
A lot of people are not psychologically the same age as they are biologically. And therapists know this. They might be 40 years old, but inside they might be a traumatized 16-year-old kid. And so when they finally acknowledge the traumatized 16-year-old child inside them, and then they go seek psychotherapy, it's the traumatized 16-year-old kid
Right.
who's reading the content on your website and not the professional 40-year-old person.
Right.
It's so I think that's one way that you do it. You start with the universal you, and then you apply the filter of your target audience and say, well, who are they really? They
Mhm.
feel misunderstood. They feel less than neutral. They're feeling the weight of humanity on them right now. But in what way is that specific to their demographic, to
Right.
their behavior, to their psychographics, to their values? And then just so let me give another example. I have this one client, and her target audience is just anxiety. She deals with the issue of anxiety, teens and adults who struggle with anxiety. That is an awesome, dominant, prominent target audience. So good for her. Okay, so an example of this is if your target audience are adults or teens with anxiety, and let's say you have an FAQ page on your website, which, by the way, I think every mental health practitioner should have an FAQ page on your website because people have questions, especially when it comes to therapy. So if your target audience is people who cope with anxiety and who are struggling with just severe anxiety, maybe they have an anxiety disorder and they're coming to get help and treatment for that, your FAQ page, you need to really explain, like, do not have short answers. You need long answers. People with anxiety, they want the details, all of them. They want you to rephrase the exact same answer in 3 different ways because then they know for sure that that is the situation. They need lots of previewing in your content. They need to know exactly what to expect. Now, if your target audience is high, like there was this one client I worked with, and their target audience was just high performing executive professionals, which that is an awesome target audience because, oh my goodness, I don't need to explain that, do I? That's just a really cool target audience and they certainly need help. So, so their FAQ page was just succinct. It was just high level. Here's the FAQ because they knew their target audience. Their target audience was high performing executive professionals who were seeking therapy support.
Right.
And so their FAQ was just succinct, to the point, 1 sentence answers. So that's it. That's an example of how you would apply the target audience filter to your marketing strategy. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I mean, gosh, you just like, that was incredible. I mean, I feel like I just got like a marketing strategy call. So thank you so much for really going into detail on that. I don't think I've heard it really discussed like that on any podcast I've listened to when we've had a marketing person on. So thank you for really going into that. That's really helpful. Okay. So, thanks for answering my question. I know that, some people listening are wondering, and maybe this is another topic, for another episode, but like the difference between when you accept insurance and then when you're cash pay, how you market yourself is probably going to be a little different. Would you say so, that it's going to be different? Yeah.
I love that you addressed that because to be honest, that is such a hot topic and like people have feelings about that, like that's just that there's a lot to unpack there. I'll keep it simple and just answer your question directly. I see, 1, be upfront about it. If you do not accept insurance, like, okay, that's fine. That is your choice and that's totally fine. There's pros and cons both ways, honestly.
Yeah.
So if you don't accept insurance, but like say that, because when people come to your website or when people are researching solutions and they're considering you as a solution, that is one of their main questions. How much is this going to cost? And do you accept my insurance? So make that clear and easy to find. And if you don't accept insurance, which is fine, that is totally your choice. Like I said, there's a lot of pros and cons for that. So it's really a personal decision. And if you choose not to accept insurance, then I think it is awesome if you explain why. I have at this point seen literally over 1,000 therapist websites. So like I have seen a lot of private practitioner websites. I've only seen one therapist, bless her heart, who explained why she did not accept insurance. And I had no idea why therapists were not accepting insurance. And then she explained it and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I totally support this. And now I don't want anyone to I want to pay for this out of pocket because that's kind of scary. And like, I was totally on board with it once I understood her why. And she was so just compassionate about it. I loved the way she worded it. She was just like, I don't accept insurance. And that's both for my protection and yours. Here's why. And she went into all the reasons why she didn't accept insurance and how that was actually a really helpful thing. And she understood that that might make it a little bit more expensive, but she felt that the pros outweighed the cons. And I was like, sister, I agree. Sold. Like, I wish someone had explained that to me years ago because I literally just figured out why that was such a big deal. Like, I don't know, last year, because one therapist was bold enough to explain herself. And I was like, that makes so much sense now. People should know the pros and cons surrounding this issue of whether or not therapists should accept insurance. It's a very important topic. And like I said, pros and cons both ways. But this lady, she did not accept it. And she was really upfront about that and explained herself. And I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I know probably what you're referring to. So And let me just give some context to people listening who don't quite understand that. I'm guessing what you saw was her reasoning was because when you use your health insurance, that goes on a medical record with your insurance, and that can be used down the road. Should you need to purchase insurance or you switch insurance, they're going to ask you, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental health condition? And that can keep you actually, depending on what you are diagnosed with, because that is a medical term. So certain diagnoses are going to weigh heavier on the framework of a medical model, like if you're insurable in the future.
Yes.
So, I'll just say that because there are pros and cons to it, and people have to decide, what they want to do, what's best for them. But for those who are wondering, I'm just going to put that out there. And I did have an experience in my early 20s with that coming. I did use my insurance for going to therapy. And when I switched insurance, man, they wanted my records. They wanted to talk to me. And it was like, I was just going through a rough patch in my life, but I'm okay. But it can, depending on how they code you, to get you enough sessions.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough on that. I don't want to take away from this amazing topic because, like you said, that's a whole other podcast episode. Well, this has just been awesome. I am so appreciative of your time and grateful. And you just gave us like a marketing 101 class. Really, it was just awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share about this topic?
I think a great way to close would be to discuss how people can identify their target audience. So if you're a listener and you're hearing this and you're realizing, oh my goodness, I need a target audience. I need to elevate my marketing strategy. But how do I discover my target audience? I want to give you all and leave you all with 7 questions that I believe if you answer these 7 questions, you will know exactly who your target audience is. So question number 1, what is the primary problem your services help solve? Question number 2, who has the primary problem your services help solve? 3, what types of services are you most qualified and experienced to treat? 4, who is definitely not in your TA? Meaning, are there any types of clients who you would ideally prefer not to work with? And that's okay. You're allowed to limit yourself on your terms. What type of client work energetically drains you? That's number 5. Number 6, what type of client work energizes you and just fuels your soul and passion? 7, and finally, are there any types of people for whom you naturally tend to have an abundance of compassion and patience for? So I think if you answer all those questions, you'll come away with a beautiful, succinct, clearly articulated target audience. And if you still want some help, please reach out to me. I would love to consult with you, help you identify who your target audience is, and work together to develop a really elevated marketing strategy so you can hit that bullseye every time.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rebekah, so much for being here and returning to the show. I have a feeling that you will probably be making another appearance in the future. So you guys, if you need help, definitely check out Rebekah, alwaysrebekah.com. Links will be in the show notes. And yeah, thanks again for being here. This has just been fabulous.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much for the service that you provide to the community, the mental health community, and also to the world. I think that the content on your podcast it just applies to so many. Your target audience is such a home run. It includes so many people. And so thank you for doing what you're doing, because I really do believe that your podcast is improving the world one listener at a time.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I'm going to listen to you on repeat when I need to pick me up. Thank you.
Well, I don't lie. It comes from the heart and it's 100% sincere. So you're safe to listen to that on repeat.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. Well, friend, I hope you found this episode with Rebekah helpful. And I want to ask you a question before we end this week's episode. Are you a therapist, psychologist, social worker, licensed counselor, or mental health professional that would like to create more income? Are you ready to do less one-to-one clinical work? Do you want to take your skills and apply them to a new revenue stream? If so, I want you to go ahead and get my list of income generating ideas. I know what it's like to feel burnt out on clinical work. I had a big aha moment when I turned 40 and decided to change things up with my therapy career. It hasn't always been a linear path, but with every failure, I grew and I applied the lessons I've learned to get to where I am today. And I hope you will download my income generating ideas. I have put together a list of 50 different things you can do with your skills, training, and experience. This list is meant to help you think outside of the box and help you identify what might be of interest to you. It's not an exhaustive list, yet the possibilities are absolutely endless. If someone else is doing it and having success, that means you can have success too. Stay open to ideas and possibilities, my friend. It's time to share your good stuff with the world. People need what you have to offer. So, how do you get this list? Okay, go ahead and hit pause on this episode, head over to the show notes, and click on the link that says Create More Income for Therapists. You will instantly get my list of 50 ideas as well as more information onto how you can grow additional streams of revenue. The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard is edited and engineered by Chelsea Weaver. If you're looking to start a podcast or ready to take the editing off of your plate, be sure to visit chelseaweaverpodcasting.com. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.